Are your 2024 title hopes dashed? Well, don't worry about it. We've got you covered tonight when we reveal our 2025 Dynasty rookie rankings for superflex leagues. All this and more. Stick around. It's the IBT podcast coming right at you.
I've been going dummy, out of bounds, putting on a clinic. Stick around, carrots in my hardware. KC, caught him in the crosshair. Look at me, been the guy calling Mr. MVP. Keep your ass on the bench by my MPC. Earn my stripes like I fixed this league. Your dog's on the turf, my dog's in the street. You can find me somewhere in between. Never a dull moment like a movie scene. About to do the ops like I did this beat. Let them keep talking RG3. Coming to you live. This is the In Between Fantasy Football Podcast.
All right. It is the In Between Fantasy Football Podcast going off on Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. This is your place for both a refreshing and feel-good take on fantasy football and NFL gambling. We're just a week away from Christmas, and not long after that, we'll be crowning some fantasy football champions. We've got not a ton of advice left to give you this season, honestly, guys. It's start your stud season, but we are going to be shifting gears a little bit on tonight's episode, looking ahead to next season with our way too early 2025 Dynasty rookie rankings. I'm your host, Seth Woolcock. Vibes are high in the great state of Pennsylvania as we head towards the inaugural college football playoff game being hosted in Happy Valley this weekend. I'm joined by the usual suspects on this program. A big business, light ranching son of a bitch, a man who could throw Khalil Shakir under a bus if he could, and then back it right back over him. Eric Romoff, what's up, Tex?
Man, we out here living. We rocking the Friends and Fins gear today, so the vibes are high, doing it for the brand. And on to the second round of the playoffs. Unfortunately, I'm in the position where only my teams with buys made their way into the second round. So still have a couple of teams with a puncher's chance, but kind of got wiped out in week 15 there.
I've been there. I feel you. I went down from 10 playoff teams just a few weeks ago, already down to 5 heading into the semifinals. So work is cut out for us, but we're going to make the most of it here tonight as well. We'll also get some early waiver wire picks later in the show to help you if you do need to get ahead for your championship matchups, hopefully coming up in a week. We're also joined tonight by our entertainment and NFL betting pundit here at In Between Media, Boston's boy, Steve Lawson. What's happening, brother?
Not much, man. How's it going? Seth, I think it's time for you to grow out the hair a bit and join the Flow Club a bit. We got the podcast with the best hair on the internet right now, besides maybe popcorn and root beer. So you gotta join the club here a bit.
I know. I was just telling Katie, like, I should probably start growing out my bangs just so they can all flop back. Like, I want the flop that you guys got going.
Yeah.
I need a little bit more weight here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's time. But yeah, the fantasy playoffs are upon us. In my home league, I moved on to the semifinal round. I'm looking for that elusive championship, so we're going for it.
Let's go. I was just about there in my home league as well, and Jonathan Taylor dropping that ball really hurt, folks. That
was a painful one.
That was a tough one.
Did you see Yahoo came out with the stats on it? It was like 8% of eliminated teams had Jonathan Taylor on them, and lost because of that dropped touchdown that turned into a fumble.
Oh my God, that's so rough. That's so rough.
God bless the broken road, my friends. God bless the broken road. That was a tough one.
Why are we still doing this in 2024?
How does it still happen? Like, why is that the celebration you want to go with? Like I'm just going to throw the ball.
Do something. Yeah, come on. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I'm tired of it, but we move forward. Still a lot of season left. And also, if you are eliminated from your fantasy football playoffs, that's why we're here tonight. We're going to talk some Rave rookie reviews, early 2025 rookie rankings, and also some 2025 movie rankings. Give you the films we're most looking forward to. Also in the scope, as we mentioned, waivers a week early. And then from the forum, we're going to answer your questions in the chat and over from the Fantasy Football Advice Network. So drop those below if you have anything we can help answer for you. Shout out to the IPT family. We appreciate everyone who tunes in each and every single episode. If you're here on YouTube watching, I want to know your 2025 rookie rankings in the chat. Let us know. I want to hear from you. Also, while you are here, Please like this video if you enjoy this type of content. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. We're just a few subscribers away from hitting 1.3K. I would love to hit that by the end of the fantasy football season, so please help us get there. We got some really cool stuff in the works, guys. I never thought we'd be doing some of the things, planning some of the things for the next season that we already are. So it's very much up to something here at IBT, but appreciate everyone hanging out with us. We got Albert stopping in saying good evening,
Albert.
IBT.
Hi,
Good
Albert.
evening to you, Albert. Also, Ben stopping in. What's up, Ben? Good to see you as always as well. Ben's been crushing it over on the site this year. He's been doing a Sure Thing Sleepers article, much better than we've been doing in the past. So, Ben, we appreciate you. He's been hitting some doozies as well. What do you guys say, though? Should we go ahead and move forward a little Rave rookie reviews, get it fired up?
Yeah, I'm sick
Let's
of playing
get it.
nice with you. It's time to start fighting.
All right, here we go. Let's get it going. All right. So in the past for these episodes, I've typically brought in a dynasty or college football expert. However, this year, I think college football has been at an absolute peak. And that is why I've been so invested in this sport. And it's given me a really good perspective, even better than usual coming in. So I took the exercise. I went through and started my 2025 Dynasty rookie rankings. We're going to go through the top 12 today for Superflex formats. I'm going to introduce the player, give you a little bit about them. And then I'm curious to hear what Steve and Eric think. We're going to go through that top 12. I got some honorable mentions as well. Again, this is Superflex format. So quarterbacks will be of value. And let's go ahead and jump right into it. At number 1, no doubt about it, it's Ashton, Jeanty, running back, Boise State. 5'9", 215 pounds, 21 years old, just 3 yards shy of 2,500 rushing yards this season. Just a year after he proved he can already catch the ball. He had 43 receptions, almost 600 yards receiving last year at Boise on the Smurf turf. And after leading the country in rushing touchdowns, 29, and rushing yards, getting Boise State to a first-round bye in the college football playoffs, and finding a very close to second Heisman voting finalist path, I think all roads are pointing to Ashton Jeanty being a first-round selection in the NFL draft, potentially as early as 14 to the Dallas Cowboys. So, Steve, any hesitancy from you for me having Ashton right there at the 101?
Talent-wise, no. Right? Like, I don't think talent-wise you can argue that Ashton Jeanty isn't. He's something that we haven't seen much of. Here's my issue with Ashton Jeanty is he's very Zeke Elliott to me. He has gotten a lot of touches. He is the offense in Boise. He's being fed the ball. He's being hit a lot. And what that usually means is running backs have so many miles on their tires, Derrick Henry notwithstanding, right? My concern is that we are already taking years off his career because he is seeing such a massive workload, right? So I think you may get that Zeke pop where he is for the first 3-4 years an elite player. My concern is that the wheels may come off after that. He is not Derrick Henry sized, right? So these hits are going to add up on him. And even Derrick Henry and Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall, we're not seeing the amount of carries this man is. Like, he is the offense and it starts and ends with him. That is concerning to me. However, I think for those 3 or 4 years, he is the number one player in Dynasty, perhaps overall.
Eric, how do you feel about Mr. Jeanty here at the 101?
I am a bit more of a basic bro and tend to pay homage to the format. So I'm usually looking at a quarterback at the 101, right? Usually if I'm drafting with the 101, it's probably because I need a quarterback. Those things would really be my only quibbles with taking Ashton Jeanty up here, right? But on merit, I think you can make a defendable case for him. In terms of Steve's point about, kind of the Zeke Elliott nature here, that is probably my favorite comp for him the more that I think about it. while you want a bit more runway, at least for me in Dynasty, I'm not really thinking out past like 3 or 4 years with running backs anyways. So
Sure.
if we're kind of limiting the time that he's at his peak powers to that window, that doesn't really change things for me. So Jeanty coming up here at the 101 is fine in my book.
Let's not forget too, CMC had a huge workload in college. Obviously, not working out the best as of late, but still gave you some sensational seasons in there. Number 2 in my rankings, it's Sheduer Sanders, quarterback out of Colorado. With the Raiders now controlling the first overall pick and relying on quarterback Desmond Ridder rest of season, it seems like it's more and more likely that Sanders will be the number 1 overall draft pick come May. Being primetime son, I think this kid's gotten the best out of everyone his entire life. People have thrown the book at him trying to say he was overrated, and he just always rose to the occasion. He led the country in passing completion percentage this year, 74.2%. Also was 3rd in passing yards, 2nd in passing touchdown. Despite being a good athlete, he doesn't give you much with his legs. At least that's what we've seen so far in college. Colorado obviously never had the best offensive line compared to some of the Big Ten or the SEC schools. But to see the development from Sanders from a school like Jackson State to the Pac-12 and now the Big 12, it's been impressive, Eric. And I think he is my quarterback 1 here and firmly entrenched. I think wherever you put him, definitely in the top 3 of all Dynasty rookie drafts come May.
Yeah, that's where I would have him. QB1, like I mentioned when we were talking about Jeanty, just based on the format, probably 101 for me, just because I do err on the side of superflex ruling the day. But with Sanders, you mentioned that career best 72.9% completion rate in 2024. That was against the Big 12, right? A lot of the questions that this kid was able to overcome was, oh yeah, he did it in high school. Does it translate to the college level? All right, he did it at Jackson State. Does it translate to the Big 12? And every single time he's been able to answer that question and do so seemingly with ease, right? So you like the accuracy. He's a real quick processor of information, right? It just seems like he's dissecting what the defense is doing and finding where the plus matchup is, taking advantage of it. His poise under pressure is an area where I'd give him a plus as well. So definitely don't mind him as my first quarterback off the board.
Steve, are you comfortable with Sanders despite maybe not having the high rushing floor that someone like Jaden Daniels brought in the 2023 or 2024 class, excuse me?
No, I'm not. And as a matter of fact, like whether it's fantasy or real life, I am out on Sheduer Sanders at this point as a player. I have watched a lot of his tape. I've watched a lot of his games. I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is he's bringing that I don't think I can get out of someone else. And there's not much, right? I mean, he has Travis Hunter, who is an all-world athlete, right? Sheduer Sanders has a very high completion percentage and low interceptions, but he takes a ton of sacks. He is someone who holds the ball forever. And he is in a similar vein of a quarterback who is currently struggling at the NFL level in Caleb Williams, in that the numbers are kind of inflated and his bad numbers are deflated because he takes a sack instead of throwing an incompletion or an interception. And he doesn't have that arm strength that you're looking for to fit the ball into a tight window. And he doesn't have that adept accurate. He's accurate-ish, right? He's kind of like a middle of the road accuracy.
He's very accurate. I think he's elite accuracy. I would say that is his best trait.
He doesn't throw dots. It's just not something that really happens. You watch some of the plays that he puts up and you're like, what is he thinking? He has a lot of like mental lapses in his game. And he's done a good job, but the proof is in the pudding. When they play more talented competition, he tends to struggle. And I mean, you can beat up on shitty Big 12 teams all you want, but until I see you process the field and make the throws you need to make and make it look like a professional throw and not just like backyard football where you chuck it up to Travis Hunter, I'm out, right? Like it's hard to get behind his style of play without seeing him really run an NFL offense. If he starts holding the ball the way he holds it in college, it's going to wind up being
I'll send you some clips. I'll send you some clips that will make you rethink, I think, some of those statements.
I'm sure his highlights are fine. Like, don't get me wrong. But everyone has highlights. I'm saying from someone who, like, my specialty in terms of what I can look at and scout is quarter. I've always hung my hat on being able to look at a quarterback and be like, this is what I'm looking at. I think Sheduer Sanders could be, I think his ceiling is like Russell Wilson. But I think his floor is Daniel Jones. Like, that's a real problem to me. And if you want to burn the first overall pick on potentially Russell Wilson, I'm kind of out on that.
Russell Wilson's a borderline Hall of Famer. Like, let's just be honest about what he was.
But is it because Russell Wilson was really good, or is it because that defense was so good that it carried him to a championship?
Both.
Well, let's keep it moving here because we're going to continue the quarterback discussion, and I want to bring up my third overall player. It is Cam Ward, the Miami transfer sensation, 6'2", 223 pounds. He is the prototypical size of a competent NFL quarterback at the next level, and he also has the game to boot. While some late season upsets did upset or end Miami's postseason bid, Ward did bring the U back to the most relevant it's been since the early 2000s. He did lead the nation in passing touchdowns, 36, was second in passing yards with over 4,000. He can also boot, scoot, and boogie a bit too, 17 rushing touchdowns at both Miami and Washington State prior. I expect Ward to land with the Giants at the second overall pick. Steve, do you like Cam Ward at all a little bit more?
I do, and that's speaking as a Florida State fan, so it really hurt that we thought we had a shot at him. He declared for the draft, and all of a sudden he wound up a Miami Hurricane. A lot of reasons for me not to be on the Cam Ward train, but listen, I'm not going to let my feelings for college football impact what I'm seeing out of this kid. And he has the poise to play at the NFL level. This man, he is the quarterback version of Alvin Kamara. I've never seen him put in a full effort on any play. Like, he looks like he's just out there like having a good time. Like, there's guys in his face and he kind of just like, he's never under pressure. He has a beautiful deep ball. He has a great accuracy. He has a good arm. I like everything out of Cam Ward. His footwork is really strong. There's not anything that I'm seeing on his tape that is telling me that he is a huge risk. I'm not saying he's a guaranteed hit because no one ever is. This is the number one quarterback in the class. And I don't think it's particularly close in terms of talent and readiness to play at the next level. It is Cam Ward. He is ready to take that step.
Eric, how far different do you have Cam Ward and Sheduer? Is it a big gap? Is it a small gap? Could you go either way based on maybe what we see the rest of the season in the combine and in the draft process overall?
No, these two are definitely in a tier together for me, right? I like Shore Sanders a little bit more, but I mean, really, in the true sense, you're kind of splitting hairs, right? For the record, if a 23-year-old Russell Wilson was coming out in the draft right now, he would probably be one of the first quarterbacks off the board, right? So not a bad outcome to get that type of play out of Sheduer Sanders. I agree with Steve that there is a ton to like about Cam Ward, right? Like, more so than anything, maybe this is just my own personal bias. Guys that go from level to level, from system to system and offense to offense, and show an ability to adapt and to evolve their game into those different iterations. Like, this is a kid that was playing a bunch of wing T when he came into the college ranks, right? Yeah. And now he's out there running a legitimate NFL offense. So, like, the ability to absorb and apply that is something that I give a lot of deference to in the pre-draft evaluation process. But in terms of Ward, right, like, that arm is killer. He can make all of the different arm angle throws. He's good out of structure and off of platform. And despite being an elite athlete, probably what I like most about him is that he's got a real good sense for when he needs to keep looking downfield and when he needs to tuck the ball and run. And that's something that it's almost kind of innate, right? Like, you kind of either have it or you don't. And the fact that he's already showing it at the college level shows it indicates a lot of promise for him with that transitioning to the NFL level next year.
Yeah, the only thing Cam Ward struggles at times with, I feel like, is sometimes decision maker. He's another guy who could sometimes throw it up and get a little careless. Yeah, he's got a little bit of Jameis in him. You know what I mean?
He has a little bit of Jameis in him, but honestly, I think you're going to look a lot more and see him play along the lines of someone like, and I'm not going to say his career is going to be like this, but it's a lot closer to, I don't want to say like his arm strength is like Aaron Rodgers-esque, but it's a very Mahomesian type of game. He's just very fun to watch, and he can make plays happen that you don't think are there. And that's what's impressive most about Cam Ward, is he kind of creates offenses for himself.
Kind of reminds me of a Geno Smith. Like, I think like peak Geno Smith, like take that in a good compliment. Like, I think you think about what Geno did at West Virginia and the sensation he was coming in.
He kind of is. He's kind of Justin Herbert. That's what I think you're getting out of Cam Ward.
That's high praise. I don't think I would go that far.
I think it's warranted.
Bang and Play in the chat. What's up, Bang and Play? We'll get your question here in just a little bit and from the forum. Thanks for hanging out with us over on Twitch. We greatly appreciate it. And Disbanded Brotherhood in the chat once again, same period. What's up, DB? Good to see you as always, brother. Hope you're having a great Tuesday evening. Thanks for joining us live here right on the IBT Media YouTube channel. Let's get to number 4, and this is where things get spicy and where I could get buried on the internet for this. One, because Jalen Milroe has not technically declared for the draft yet. We've heard a lot of different reports that, hey, maybe this guy's looking to transfer. Maybe he's looking to stay at Alabama. But kind of what we're getting insider knowledge right now is that he is leaning towards going to the draft. And I think in a draft without a clear quarterback 3, we just saw Drew Aller. He'll be returning to Penn State. Rumors are Quinn Ewers could possibly also be returning to Texas or sign with another team, whether that's North Carolina or one of these Big Ten schools that's also throwing a couple milli at him. I think Milroe is going to be getting pushed up draft boards because there are so many quarterback-needy teams at the top of the draft, like Cleveland, Tennessee, the New Orleans Saints. I think that will especially happen after he shows off his athleticism in Indianapolis at the Combine and at his pro day. 6'2", 225 pounds. He has the size to compete at the NFL level. It's been kind of up and down career, honestly, for this Texas native. I feel like throughout it, his passing did seem to regress some this year, even with freshman sensation Ryan Williams at wide receiver. However, he did scamper to 719 yards, 20 rushing touchdowns. That's 7th in the nation, not just among quarterbacks, but everybody. And I think in general, he has proved that he can play against high-level competition. He beat Georgia both this year in heroic fashion and last year to win the SEC championship. But more than anything, boys, this comes down like I want mobile quarterbacks in fantasy. And we know how hard it is to trade for quarterbacks in superflex formats. So I'm going Milroe at 4. I don't think anyone else has him even close to this high in their dynasty rankings, but I'm really foreshadowing the future. How do you feel about it, Eric? Are you going to be on that train burying me?
No, we are in lockstep. Actually, I was just chatting with our boy Mags over the Dynasty Hot Seat last week, and I had Jalen Milroe as my 3rd quarterback off the board and 5th player overall. So kind of splitting hairs there. But yeah, I mean, in today's NFL, right, like presuming that he declares he's going to be like about a top 10 pick, if not earlier, right? Shout out JJ McCarthy for being the 11th pick. But basically, in with teams that are quarterback needy and are addressing it to the draft, they're spending a top 12, top 10 pick to get a guy. So he's going to have the requisite draft capital that you need. And that athleticism is choice, right? You know, maybe his runway isn't quite as long as we expect out of the quarterback position in Dynasty. But if you get, 4, 5, 6, 7 years out of him where he's producing a lot with his legs, that is more than reasonable return for the draft capital that you spent on him. The athleticism is obviously what jumps out of the page. He's got an ability to deliver a pretty zippy ball, right? Like it comes out of his hand fast. He's kind of got that nice, like firm with an arc trajectory that you're looking for, sort of like an NFL level throw. His game isn't without flaws though, right? On the downside,
yeah.
His mechanics can be a little sloppy. His footwork isn't the best.
But we could say all these things about A-Rich too, and we've seen them play out at the NFL. But if someone's willing to design an offense around this, it could be lethal. You could have games where he's getting 2 rushing touchdowns and 80 or 90 yards on the ground. I mean, we've seen games at Bama. Obviously, that's college football, not the highest level of the sport, but this is a guy we've seen, Steve, who has gone out and had 3 rushing touchdowns in a game and has run all over teams like LSU, who just could not stop him for anything in that game earlier this season.
Yeah, I think this is. I'll tell you this. I think 2 through 4 are just a spot too high, and we'll get to that in a minute. But Jalen Milroe, here's my issue with him. Right, is you need a team. He's very Justin Fields to me. This is who his comp is for me. Now, if you have a team that's going to develop him, put time into him, build an offense around him, he'll be great. If not, he'll probably be a year or 2 starter and then a bench player. Right? He has a lot of flaws in his game, and I think he has more flaws in his passing game than even Justin Fields had coming into the league. I think Jalen Milroe honestly would benefit more from staying in college for another year, transferring out of Bama, going to a more spreadish, like a bit better passing attack than Bama's got right now. Maybe just a different scheme. Try to get a fresh start somewhere and just show that you can do better than you did. Because if I'm an NFL team, you said Anthony Richardson and I mentioned Justin Fields. How can you look at either of them, which are pretty good comps for him, and feel like that's what you want to invest in right now?
Because I think he'll be a starter for at least some time, and I think that's going to be a really fun ride. And I think if he does stay in college, I think he's best set up to stay here with DeBoer, stay with Sheridan down in Bama, because they've built this offense around his play style now, and it's fun. And you're right. It's not the type where he's going to show off his arm, but he still has Ryan Williams out there that isn't going anywhere, despite all the rumors on the internet.
Have a coach fix his passing then. Like Alabama needs to focus on that. Because they're doing him a disservice at this point, where he doesn't look NFL ready at all.
Sure. Eric, any final thoughts on Milroe here, or you locked in steady at the 4?
No, I'm good with it, right? I think the real answer to this question is just more about kind of your draft philosophy and how much risk tolerance you carry or not, right? If you're
I'm swinging. I'm laying my nutsack on the table every single time I get in a Dynasty rookie
trying to
draft.
ride that thing to the moon. It's going to be a fun ride. It's probably going to be some bumps along the way, right?
Yeah.
What are we really doing here in this game? It should be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Meet your wide receiver 1 of the 2025 class, Tech McMillan, 6'5", 212 pounds. He is your prototypical X wide receiver. Dude has one of the nastiest catch radiuses I've ever seen. He can be moved all over the field as well. Back-to-back seasons of 80-plus receptions and 1,300 yards. Was top 5 in the nation in receiving yards both here in 2024 and a year ago in 2023 as well. The only issue is that he played at Arizona and could never get Arizona as a team over the top in a very soft Pac-12 and now Big 12. Didn't take another big step this year, kind of leveled off a little bit. Eric, is Tet your wide receiver 1? And do you like him here at 5, or do you think I have him too low or too high?
He is my wide receiver 1. I think he's about right. I had him ahead of Jalen Milroe when I went through my top 12 a week or so ago. Because I think that, there is a premium to getting the best player at his position in a rookie draft. And I think that's the type of thing that can serve as a tiebreaker between like your 4th and 5th guy off the board. Right.
Sure.
But for Tet, I mean, he fits the mold perfectly of a prototypical like perimeter X receiver, right? He's got the size, he's got the speed, he can win contested catches at more of like a 65-35 clip. His catch radius is insane, and his hands are like Velcro. So everything that you're looking for. I'm going to make Steve nice and happy and say that he reminds me a lot of Drake London or maybe Rome Odunze, somewhere in that type of mold.
Steve, you have not been the brightest, chipperest person I've seen on this program. You've been really playing devil's advocate here. Do you have anything to note here on Tet that has you down on him, or is he your wide receiver 1 in standing?
He is my wide receiver 1, and he's actually my number 2 player overall in this draft as far as superflex goes. To me, he is far and away better than Drake London and Rome Odunze. He is much more in the vein of a Julio Jones than I think he is of them. He is big, he is fast, and he can separate. His footwork is incredible. His ability to make things happen after the catch at his size is remarkable. He is going to be somebody that I honestly think could rival like what guys like Malik Neighbors, guys like what Jalen Waddle did his rookie season, Julio Jones did his rookie. I mean, this guy is big. He's fast. He's exactly what if you built a wide receiver, like you're building this guy, like Calvin Johnson is not a ridiculous comp for this man. Like it is
the size,
6'5", 220, runs like a gazelle. This man is going to run
a little. Tet needs to get in the gym a little bit. That's kind of my one thing. I think he needs to bulk up a little bit.
But like you look at like Julio Jones, even he was a thin dude, right? When Tet comes out at the draft and runs a 4.38 40 or a 4.4 40, he is going to be a top 5 pick. Like this dude, to me, would be the wide receiver 1 in last year's class. That's how good I think this man is.
Wow. Okay. I think I'm a little bit lower than consensus. Obviously, I think here, obviously having him down at 5. I know a lot of people have him up around the 2-3 area in their superflex ranking. So I'm going to go with Tet at 5 there, and we're going to continue on at the wide receiver position. I got Travis Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winner, comes in right behind him. And he is the Biletnikoff winner for the best wide receiver in college football across the nation. Top 5 in receptions with 92, over 1,100 receiving yards, 14 touchdowns for the kid as well. This is all while being a shutdown corner and playing 300 more snaps than anybody else. 300 more snaps. Like that, those are games for people. And imagine what he could have just been doing playing wide receiver. He's a great kid. He didn't come from a lot. He is kind of this newer style, more slender, 185-pound receiver. However, the issue for me is I don't know if Travis Hunter is going to play wide receiver or cornerback. And that could, we could be looking at Travis Hunter logistically as a second-round pick in Superflex if he goes to a team that wants to make him a cornerback and use him in packages on offense. However, I am hoping that he goes to somewhere where like New England, where they have to use him on offense first. We'll figure out the cornerback stuff later. We'll throw him in some defensive packages, maybe use him in the return game a little bit, but he needs to play on offense because we're throwing to Pop Douglas and the ghost of Kendrick Bourne out there. Like that's kind of what we got. So I like Hunter here at 6, but Eric, there's a wide range of outcomes here, really depending on my landing spot. And if I was drafting pre-NFL draft this season, I would be nervous. I would be nervous taking Hunter here, and I don't think I would have him this high.
Yeah, that's the hedge, right? We don't know exactly how he is going to be thought of or deployed at the NFL level. If we knew definitively that he was going to be a wide receiver, I think he would be, along with Tet, ahead of Milroe at minimum, potentially higher, right? Obviously a cerebral kid, his understanding of the game is elite, right? The best way to know how to counterpunch your opponent is to know their plan for defending you, right?
Yeah.
So, he's very unique in that regard, right? Not only playing both sides, but having that in-depth understanding of both sides. But as a prospect outright, his explosiveness jumps off the page, right? Like he's got that, kind of that short area quickness, fleet-footed acceleration that you're looking for, but also at top speed can pull away from some people, right? Like there are a number of things that you like about his game. Obviously has the ability to reel the ball in. He's got good anticipation, solid hands, all of the needful stuff that you're looking for in a top wide receiver. But he's got a couple of things that nobody else in this class can say, and that nobody else really in the history of NFL can say.
Steve, you are a New England Patriots fan by nature. Do you think if they are to draft him, they're right now tucked into that 3 slot? Do you think it's an automatic he is going to start at wide receiver and then figure out the cornerback stuff later if he ever does? Or do you think they will play him on defense given Gerard Mayo's background?
I think no matter where he goes, he probably is going. I would say odds right now are he's going to play defense primarily. I think that's what he profiles as.
A lot of mixed reporting on the internet. A lot of mixed reporting.
I would say watching him, I think he profiles better as a defender. I think he's a very good cornerback. I think he benefited from some soft defenses in the Big 12. We saw when the games got a bit more talented, he struggled a bit more, just like Sheduer Sanders did. I think at the NFL level, he profiles a lot as like Jaden Reed, right? Like that's kind of what I see him as a wide receiver. But you're telling me if you're in the New England Patriots, you don't want to roll him out there next to Christian Gonzalez and say, go ahead and try to throw on us, because you can't. Like that's much more valuable to me than having someone out there who's like explosive, but not very good at like getting open. It's a little bit different. I think he's very talented. I won't take away from how talented he is and how good he is on both sides of the ball, but it doesn't profile out at the NFL level. I don't think on the offensive side of the ball as well. Not that he won't be good, but he won't be as good on the offensive side as he will be on the defensive side.
Interesting. I think Steve's a Colorado hater. I think that's what I'm learning here, Eric. I think Steve's not with Coach Prime and the gang.
I am not a Coach Prime believer.
I mean, look, if you want to take his responses in a vacuum, he is right to say that this has been one of the worst years of Big 12 football in probably all of our memories.
I mean, it was fun though. There was some fun. Like
It was definitely fun. Like, don't get me wrong, it's fun to watch. It's just
but
not.
yeah. Like it's different, especially the
The Big
fact
12
that.
was like the JV
Well, I mean,
conference. I mean, it
I
wasn't
mean,
great.
it was categorically. I think where we differ is like I don't think that's necessarily a disqualifier, right? Like
I
there
clearly
are
don't
plenty
either
of
because
NFL
I have Ted
assets.
McMillan being my number 2 player.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Ashton, who's coming from the Mountain West, like a non P4
I
school.
won't rule it against them, but when you have an offense like prime, Deion Sanders built that offense for Sheduer Sanders and Travis Hunter to look very good, right? Like that is his primary goal. That is his primary focus, was to get his son and Travis Hunter exposure and draft capital. I think when that goes away and all of a sudden they're not entirely focused on them, that doesn't translate as well.
Fair. I'm going to go ahead and move to number 7 in my rankings. It is TreVeyon Henderson. He is my current RB3. You actually would have been my RB1 in last year's class, but before deciding to return to Ohio State, Henderson, probably a day 2 pick, but he's absolutely lived up to the billing at Ohio State. Funny enough, his freshman year was his best from a counting stat perspective, but he did just take less of a workload. He got hurt his sophomore year. This season, we saw Quinshon Judkins in the backfield as well. The reason I said RB3, excuse me, the reason he's my RB2 is because his pass catching ability and his explosive nature. 27 receptions, 312 yards as a freshman. I mean, those are great numbers as a collegiate freshman. Also, probably the best pass blocking running back in this draft. So he is going to get on the field early and often in the NFL. If you want to knock him for one thing, he will be 23 in October, so a little bit older than some of these other backs. But Steve, how do you feel about Henderson here at 7? Do you think it's appropriate rank for a guy who does have a 3 down skill work set?
I do not have him as my running back too. I will say that. I am personally a fan of Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State. That is the man who I think
so
should
bad
be the,
for Ollie this year, though. But
like I think that's
where
the
do you
man
have
who should be the
Henderson?
RB.
Where do you have Henderson?
Probably my RB 4, maybe 5.
Okay.
I don't know if he was the best running back on his team. That's my problem, right? And if you can't separate at the collegiate level, I do worry about you at the pro level. That just is kind of where I'm at. I don't think running back is uber talented this year. I think it's I think it's good, but I don't know if Henderson has workhorse in him, right? And if that's my RB2, I need workhorse out of you. I think he profiles a lot more. And this is going to sound crazy because he's a fantasy stud. He's very Kyron Williams to me. He shouldn't be a workhorse. Now, if he lands in a place that he is a workhorse, then yeah, sure. Whatever. If he goes to the Rams, he's the number 1 guy, then yeah, he'll probably put up numbers. But he doesn't do anything exceedingly well except for pass blocking. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's just not exciting enough for me to burn the 7th pick on him.
Where are you at on Henderson? Do you like, because from a fantasy perspective, like that's why, like from a pure running back perspective, I could make an argument for Judkins, another running back I'm going to talk about later. But from a fantasy perspective, he's the best pass catching running back, I think, aside from Jeanty in this class, and I think he's comparable to Jeanty on the pass catching element, especially when you factor in his pass blocking.
I was rocking with you until you said those words, comparable to Jeanty.
Yeah,
Jeanty's a really good receiving back.
He is. He's a much better receiving back than TreVeyon Henderson. Is why I take issue with it. For me, I think Henderson's pass pro is more good than great. He's got the fundamentals down, which is not nothing. A lot of guys come into the league without those fundamentals down, and they don't start touching the ball until like late November.
If they ever do, Blake Corum, you motherfucker.
Yeah, his year's coming next year. Don't worry, pal. Never wrong. Just early. I
need it.
The thing that gives me pause for TreVeyon Henderson, and I'll say in terms of as an evaluation, as a prospect from a talent evaluation standpoint, he's not my running back too. He is not even the number 1 running back on his own team. Sounds like I'm closer to Steve with that in that regard. The thing that gives me the biggest pause is I think it's going to depend a lot on landing spot with him, more so than with other running backs on the board. And that's typically how I make these tight decisions. Like if there are guys that sort of regardless of landing spot, I know I'm going to be interested in, I tend to rank them higher than the guy who kind of has to fall into that right spot.
Sure.
And I think that's more TreVeyon Henderson. That third down role is necessary, and teams need it, and they tend to invest in filling that role with a rookie running back. But it's usually not an early draft round guy. It's usually behind someone who already has the early down work already well cemented. So, I mean, there's too many question marks kind of swirling around him to make me feel comfortable with him as my RB2.
Okay. Number 8, I got Luther Burden. This is another player that I think could potentially move in my rankings, depend what we see in Indianapolis in a couple of months. Super twitchy guy. With what appears to be top shelf speed, he can hit the deep shot. Also really good at creating yards after the catch on crossing patterns. He's another true X, but he is 5'11", so somewhat shorter than we're used to at that position. Another concern is that Burden's yardage total was nearly cut in half this year, and Theo Weiss took a really nice step at Missouri, leading that team in yards over Burden. Mizzou as a whole seriously underperformed. They were a preseason top 5 team. Brady Cook regressed a bit in and out of the lineup with some different issues. So Missouri as a whole was kind of on a downward trend. I think Luther Burden, if we were doing this preseason, he was in a lot of people's discussion for the wide receiver 1. I'm also going to bring up my player 9 overall. My running back 3 in this class is Nicholas Singleton from Penn State. We are, baby. From a pure talent perspective, you could argue that Singleton could be the top back in this draft. Incredible athlete, 228 pounds. He has the build, but still patient runner. Nice as a receiver as well. Over 600 yards of receiving, 7 receiving touchdowns this past season. Plus, he won a second-team Big Ten honoree as a returner his freshman year. So we know how NFL teams are valuing returners. We know how certain fantasy formats also give a lean to performers in the return game, a la Scott Fishbowl. He's another guy I think who could be a workhorse if he can develop his route tree a little bit more. Does a lot of swing passes, does a lot of wheel routes. Also a great teammate and a guy I think you want in the locker room. He was roommates with backfield mate Kayshon Allen, who kind of emerged alongside Allen. Wasn't supposed to be this high profile prospect coming in. Kind of took some of the shine away. And Allen and Singleton got along great. Singleton loved cheering on Allen. So just a great locker room guy. I think he's a pro's pro here. So Eric, your thoughts on Singleton and Burden? And honestly, there's part of me that wants to rank Singleton potentially even over Burden. I think these guys are really close for me. I think Singleton, I could argue all the way up at 7 potentially.
Yeah, Singleton is who I would have as my RB2. Knowing that you love smoking on that Penn State pack, I thought you might have him as your RB1 overall.
It's close. It's so close.
He's
not RB1, but overall, yeah.
He's much more of that like three down back type of archetype that you're looking for, and that I want to invest in. Invest first round draft picks in dynasty rookie drafts. Just absolute physical freak out there, right? Like can make people miss, can shed tackles. He's got good vision. He runs with some good anticipation. Just all the things that you're looking for, and that I think will ultimately lead to him drawing some pretty high draft capital in the NFL draft. And then for Burden, I mean, just absolute track star, right? Like he does have that twitchy kind of short area quickness that you mentioned, but he's also got some straight line speed. If nothing else, I think he stands to contribute at a pretty good level as a wide receiver onto himself, but also like you bring that type of skill set onto the field with your offense, and it changes the way that secondaries have to play your team. And NFL front offices know that, and they put a bit of a premium on it. So I think another guy that will absolutely don some interest in the day one name calling in April.
Steve, any thoughts from you on Burden or Singleton? Shane saying to Eric, you have a twitchy skills, Eric. That's a nice little compliment. Appreciate you, Shane. Thanks for hanging out, buddy. What do you think, Steve? Any thoughts here on either the Penn State running back or the Missouri wideout?
Yeah, I love Luther Burden as a player. He's very like Deebo Samuel to me. Early year Deebo Samuel. He's not the biggest guy, but he's strong. He's fast. He can do a lot after the catch. I wouldn't be surprised to see him take some handoffs in a game. Like, you try to get him involved however you can, right? If he comes out and he puts up a 4.340, I mean, you look at Tyreek Hill, he did just fine as an X receiver, right? And that's, I'm not going to quite crown this man Tyreek Hill, but he's kind of similar. He's kind of built like him, right?
I am super curious what his 40 is going to be. I think that's one of the greatest
Like,
mysteries because people say he could go out there and run a sub 4.4, but I have no idea because you
right.
never know, right?
You never know. And if he does, then you're like, all right, so maybe this man is built like Tyreek Hill, and you wind up drafting him to a team that winds up building an offense around him. I don't think there's a problem with that whatsoever. As far as your boy out of Penn State there, Singleton, yeah, he's a 3-down back. I think he's great. I think he's really explosive. He's really strong. He's built well. He has the physical makeup to be an NFL running back, 3-down guy. Yeah, I think it's, maybe a spot or too low for him, but I think it's really good.
Look at me, the Penn State fan, being low on my own guy. That's
right.
crazy. I got two more Ohio State players back to back at 10 and 11. Maybe the hardest runner in this class, Quinshon Judkins. This guy is a damn weapon. 6 foot tall, 219 pounds as well. Had over 1,500 yards in the SEC rushing as a freshman. That is no small feat. He pushed former 5-star Zach Evans out of Ole Miss, who turns out Evans was not really that good. He was thinking he was supposed to be the next coming. Transferred to Ohio State, kind of became the Knuckles to Henderson's Sonic, if you would. The downside is he might not be used on third down for a while, if not ever. Not a great pass blocker, an okay comparable pass catcher, but the blocking definitely not there. Definitely his weak spot. Also, at 11, I'm going with our third Buckeye on the list, wide receiver for this class for me, Emeka Egbuka, 6'1", 205 pounds. Really interested in to see if he's actually 6'1", because he doesn't always look 6'1". I don't know if there's a 6 foot and you're getting a little bump, or if you are actually 6'1", or maybe you're 6'2". Very shifty slot wide receiver. He can also run from the flank in 2 wide receiver sets. Had over 1,200 total yards, 11 touchdowns with CJ Stroud in 2022, 25th all-time in the Big Ten for receptions. Only issue, he never led his own team in receiving yards. Marv was always a bit better than him as a true freshman. He also was running up against the likes of Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, JSN, so had a lot of competition. And then this past year, when we finally thought, okay, this is Egbuka, he's coming back to be the one, and it was true freshman Jeremiah Smith who was the standout. Egbuka did beat him in receptions, did have more touchdowns, but Jeremiah Smith did have a couple more yards than him so far this season. Obviously, college football playoffs pending. Eric, how do you feel about these past 2 Buckeyes? I brought up Egbuka and Judkins. Is this close to where you have them in your rankings, or am I a bit too high in my Big Ten faithful?
Directionally close. I've got Judkins ahead of his teammate TreVeyon Henderson, right? But in terms of like where I expect him to go in drafts, probably pretty bang on, right? For me, the thing that I like about Judkins is that I think there's some upside to his game that we're not fully able to account for, right? Like he's like the hard-nosed runner, bruiser, just absolutely explodes through arm tackles and even good form tackles. But then he looks really light on his feet. And the upside that I think is kind of hidden here is like they don't throw to him much, but he's got some pretty nice hands. He's got a soft touch. It seems like I don't think that Kenneth Walker is the comp for him, but a guy in the mold of Kenneth Walker, in so much as he's a decent receiver. They just never really asked him to do it that much. So kind of an open question. But if the small glimpses we've seen on tape scale out, a ton of upside to his game, I think he's closer to like almost like a Joe Mixon type more than anything else, which would be really exciting to enter into the league next year. And then for Egbuka here, oh man, there's a lot to like about his skill set and how he profiles and a lot of the boxes that he checks overall, right? Like, he is kind of the prototypical Ohio State receiver, just an absolute technician, great route tree, good in and out of his stems as he's getting in and out of those routes, can create a little bit of separation. I worry, and this is such a lazy comp. I worry that he's kind of the Terrace Marshall of this group, right? Like the dude that's always the bridesmaid and can never do enough to really separate from these elite receivers. He has all of the skills to prove me wrong there. I would kind of like to see it before I invest anything meaningful in him.
Yeah, that very, very fair. Steve, any thoughts on the Ohio State duo of Emeka and Quinshon?
Yeah, I think one comp I have for Quinshon is Isaiah Pacheco. I think he just
Yeah,
kind of
that's fair.
Yeah,
runs like
that's
he
fine.
has somewhere to be, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
he kind of
yeah.
just like,
He's gonna go steal your girlfriend. Yeah.
yeah, like he hasn't been asked to do a ton of the passing work, so I don't know, but like that's kind of how I see him. Arm tackles aren't going to cut it. He's going to get you those 4 yards and then bust one long for you every now and then. Egbuka, very Tyler Lockett, right? Like I think that's a fair comp for him. Like he's not really, you don't want him on the
Fair.
outside. You'd much rather have him on the inside. And I think he'll be a productive player at this level, unless he does turn into Terrace Marshall, in which case I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But like,
yeah.
I like to look at the upside for these guys, and that's kind of where I'm at with him. Is very Tyler Lockett. He'll get himself open, and these guys I think are Quinshon's too low because he's better than
Okay.
TreVeyon Henderson. But Egbuka,
I listen. I agree that I think he's better than TreVeyon Henderson as a prospect. It's more that I just think Henderson gets on the field sooner and has more pass catching work is what I'm looking for. Like this is, I'm not ranking. This ain't my big board here. This is my my fantasy ranks.
Yeah, I still think I'd rather take the guy who's gonna I think he'll actually be like a touchdown scorer. And Egbuka, like, I mean, who knows? Maybe he's JSN, right? Like JSN wasn't a great outside receiver. He's a really good slot receiver. Maybe he turns into that. And it wouldn't shock me. So I think Egbuka has been surrounded by elite college wide receiver talent.
Yeah. I mean,
Just because there's been, 4 first-round picks around him doesn't mean that he himself is not a very high upside pick.
oh yeah, I mean we have just Olave, Garrett Wilson alone, JSN. All three of those guys have wide receiver 1 fantasy seasons. That's not even counting Marvin Harrison Jr., who we thought was going to be a generational prospect, and Jeremiah Smith, who is the next coming, right?
Tracking as a first round pick, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
I mean, top 5 pick in the draft.
This man has been the victim of a generational run of wide receivers at Ohio State.
Yeah, Shane saying Ibuka's route running over TMJ's route running for sure. For sure,
I agree. He doesn't allow speed like TMJ did.
He's saying I love Egbuka. Think he's going to be the steal of rookie drafts. He very well could be, and you're getting him here towards the end of the first round.
And that's the great part. When you're at the end of the first round, you have to think like these are the picks that don't burn. Right, you're already a championship contender. Yeah. This is where you take an Egbuka and go, I may have just locked my team into championship contention for the next decade.
Sure.
And or if you're sold on Egbuka, this is where you trade back to like the 202 and get him there and add some future draft assets to your arsenal, right? Like,
yeah, potentially.
This is the part where we're really reading between the lines can make it can develop an edge for you in Dynasty.
Sure, absolutely. I'll round us out on a guy. I'm not trying to miss the next game changer at the tight end position. 88 receptions, 9th in all of college football. Again, not among tight ends, all receiving prospects. Over 1,000 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, plus had 191 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. And oh yeah, he also had a passing touchdown because he played high school quarterback. Penn State does everything with this guy. Tush push, line him up, wildcat direct snap plays, handoffs in the backfield, traditional routes as a tight end. He can get you yards after the catch in spades. Won the John Mackey Award for the most outstanding tight end, and he's the closest thing to Brock Bowers I think we're ever going to see. He has first-round draft capital in the NFL coming. He's going to potentially maybe go to a great team or a great quarterback because he'll probably go towards the end of the first round. So we could be looking at a situation where Tyler Warren's in a Cincinnati Bengals uniform, or Tyler Warren is linking up with someone like Bo Nix in a Sean Payton-led offense, or Tyler Warren's lining up and being the next in-line prodigy to Travis Kelce. So I can't get enough of Tyler Warren. I think he's going to be phenomenal at the next level. Coming into this season, obviously, he was well behind Colston Loveland, who was the tight end 1 for a few seasons now. But this guy is generational, and I think he's someone from fantasy football purposes specifically, boys, we can get behind him because he could be used in different ways to get you the ball, get you tush-push touchdowns, get you jet sweep touchdowns. So, Eric, I'm all over Tyler Warren here at 12.
I am too. Actually, I have him as my tight end 1 in the class, but apparently I'm not quite as bullish on him as you are. I will not invoke the name of Brock Bowers, basically in the company of anyone else, but still my favorite at the position. Still a guy that I think you can make a defendable case for drafting at the end of your first round. I mean, his athleticism just jumps off the page. Despite being relatively new convert to the position, his ability as a pass catcher is incredible. Just snags the ball out of the air, just perfectly comfortable making catches away from his body, which is not something that you see in all tight ends coming out. For me with Warren, it's two sides of the same coin, almost a different version of the conversation we had with Judkins. Him being so new to the position means there's either potentially some upside to his game. He's going to continue to get more and more comfortable and do more and more things. And there's, a very, very high ceiling if that outcome comes to pass. Or him being new to the position means that he's going to get to the NFL level as a tight end and start getting his lunch eaten in blocking and not be able to compete with the elite pass defenders at the NFL level. So open question, right? If you're more on Seth's side of the coin, then you think that the upside comes and he is a difference maker on your dynasty roster. If you're a bit more conservative, maybe he's someone that you try to pick up in the early part of the second as your draft wraps back around.
Steve, how do you feel about T. Warren, Mackey Award winner?
Still not having him as my tight end one. This is where I think experience. Tight end is notoriously the hardest position for rookies to come in and master, right? Like we see it all the time. Brock Bowers being the exception. I think it's the same thing you did when you compared Jeanty to like TreVeyon Henderson. Like you shouldn't do that because they are kind of one of one, right? Brock Bowers did it for years. Brock Bowers was doing this. Tyler Warren had a good season, a great season, but he's done it once.
But he also had guys like Theo Johnson and Brenton Strange in front of him. And you have to remember that as well. Like,
okay, but
who are also day 2 NFL draft picks.
Who are backups.
Well, Theo Johnson was a starter before he got hurt as a rookie.
But like it was kind of like, right? Listen, I think Colston Loveland is still my tight end one. He is big, fast, experienced. He can block a little bit better than Tyler Warren can. These jack of all trades tight ends scare me a little bit.
He's Taysom Hill, bro. He's Taysom Hill, but
I don't want Taysom Hill.
A legit pass catcher, though. He's legit pass catcher. Like
he is a good pass catcher.
He is someone. Tyler Warren could legit have a 40 burger in fantasy football. I think like that's in the cards. This guy's
or maybe he can't block at all and they pull him off the field. I mean, I don't know, right? Like, listen, he's plenty athletic, right? Like, but athleticism doesn't really get it done all the time, right?
Sure.
If it did, then Mike Gesicki would be the tight end one in fantasy. Like, it just doesn't matter like that all the time. So I think Tyler Warren, it's going to be a situation where Colston Loveland is going to be a good tight end no matter where he goes.
Yeah. Honorable mentions for me: Omarion Hampton, running back, North Carolina. This guy's a weapon. Honestly, he's someone I always value. I think I always ding ACC players a little bit, especially at the running back position. I just do value the harder competition because you're going to face harder competition up front in the Big Ten, in the SEC that you got to go through. So that's why I ding Hampton a little bit.
There's so many elite running backs that come out of the ACC.
I'm not disqualifying that at all, but Hampton still he's right around. I think that early second round in dynasty rookie drafts. Colston Loveland right behind him as well. I'd be happy to get Loveland in the early second round. I also have a pair of Oregon wide receivers, Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart. They're guys that both coming in last year. People thought maybe we would see Stewart enter the NFL draft. We didn't. He came back to Oregon. They're on the number 1 team in the country. Very balanced team. So I felt like neither of these players have had to carry that team so far this season, but they are still explosive players. I think they're looking good. Trey Harris, this guy at Ole Miss, he had some injury concerns this past year. Eric, I'm seeing that the years pop up a little for Trey Harris. I love Trey Harris. I think he's one of the best go-getters when it comes to a guy when you need a reception. Like, this guy's got glue on his hands. So I do like Trey Harris. Injury concerns a little bit. And then Ollie Gordon, I thought deserved a mention as well, as Steve mentioned him earlier. Great 23 season. Really regressed this past season, but Oklahoma State as a whole did. Mike Gundy, I don't know what was going on with that team. A little bit sketchy on kind of just the usage of Ollie Gordon overall, especially with Bowman kind of on his last leg down there. So I'm mixed on Ollie Gordon. I really am. I think he could be a pro's pro, and so I'm mixed. Eric, did you have something to note on Trey Harris though? It seems like he might be a favorite of yours.
He is a favorite of mine, and I'm particularly keen on hearing Steve's point of view on him, because for me, like you talk about a guy that can go get you a catch when you need one, like absolutely lethal when it comes to contested catch situations. Makes him killer when it gets into scoring territory into the red zone. Those injury concerns are there, and like one of our favorite players, there's an open question about his ability to separate. And so for me, his range is somewhere between like Keon Coleman and Brian Thomas Jr., which is a fantastic range. But anytime that I'm invoking the name of Keon Coleman, I can't help but smile. And that was the reaction that you caught from me as you're running down the list.
Okay. Steve, any thoughts on Harris? Do you like Harris?
I mean, I think I like him fine. I don't think I like Keon Coleman more. Here's my issue with Harris, right? Is he went for 65 catches 2 years ago, 54 catches a year ago, 60 catches this year. That isn't awesome, right? Like he never really
he was hurt a lot this year though. He was there was a point early in the season he was leading the country in catches and he got hurt. It's the injury concerns for Harris, man. That like or just the injuries in general, I feel like is why he kind of, and like honestly, like Jackson's dart really didn't improve, I think, as much as people thought this year. He was a bit reckless as well down there for a guy Lane.
Yeah, I think he's good, right? Like I think he'll be a serviceable receiver at the NFL level, but I don't know if he's going to be enough to be a difference maker. I would put him much more in that vein of kind of where I have Romo Dunze, is he's going to struggle to separate. There will be some big games, there will be some small games, and I think that'll be his career. Now people are going to be like, but Romo's a top 10 pick. That's fine. I don't care that Romo's a top 10 pick. He shouldn't have been. And I screamed that from the rooftops.
Sure.
I think that's kind of where we're at with this guy.
Okay. Very, very fair. We got Shane in the chat saying Jaquez Hunter, honorable mention. Yeah, that's very fine. This is such a deep running back class, man. Like we haven't even talked about a handful of guys. We haven't talked about Kayshon. We haven't talked about someone like Trevor Etienne either. So there's a lot to like in this class. Hunter's another name I know people like, especially down there in the state of Alabama who are watching a lot of Auburn football. So appreciate that. Shout out Shane. Also appreciate Didi hanging out with us in the chat tonight. What's up, Didi? Good to see you as always. Hope you're enjoying life out there. Didi just moved out to Idaho. So thanks for making some time for us here. Wanted to thank everyone who is tuning in tonight with us. If this is your first time watching the IBT podcast, thank you so much. We got a heavy dose of content coming your way, whether you're into sports betting, fantasy sports, right here on the channel. So make sure if you enjoy this type of content, hit that like button. Also subscribe if you're new. We're just about 1,300 subscribers, so trying to get there. Next on the show, we just finished up our rookie rankings. If you're just tuning in right now, you want to go back and watch those, scroll back. We talked about those for the last 60 or so minutes. We're going to get into part of Rave rookie reviews. We also like to talk a little pop culture, a little entertainment here. So we're going to talk about our 2025 movie rankings, just some quick notes on some of our favorite 2025 blockbusters coming. And then we'll get into some waivers a week early, and then we'll answer your questions in the chat as well. Hope everyone's having a great night. Let's keep it moving here with some movie rankings. Steve, you are our movie expert, entertainment expert here at IBT. So give us your top three movie rankings for 2025. What's good with that?
Yeah, so I'm going to start out with Wicked. It was originally Wicked Part 2, but now it's Wicked for Good, which is just emotional damage. For anyone who has seen Wicked, that is a cruel thing to call this movie. It is already invoking tears in the fans of the movie and of the show. I am so excited for it. For me personally, No Good Deed is one of my favorite songs in all of Broadway history. I think it holds up to some of the best ones from part one. It's going to be so fun to watch Cynthia Erivo do that, and her and Ariana Grande maybe going for back-to-back Oscar contention. At number two, I am a horror movie. I am a sucker for horror movies. I love horror movies, and I love when they do them well. Wolfman looks genuinely terrifying. and incredibly gross and gory and just primal. I am all in on this January release for Wolfman. I will be sat at opening night, ready to go and get the shit scared out of me. And at 3, I am hoping and praying. I am an avid reader. I don't know about the two of you, but I love to sit down with a good book. And Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park, we got a bit more of a family-friendly version, if you can believe that, in the originals. This is a very dark, gross, gory story. And Spielberg's back at the helm, and I'm hoping that they take this Rebirth movie and bring it to that R rating that Jurassic World, Jurassic Park should be, and let us see the horrors that this would invoke. You got Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali, and Jonathan Bailey in a movie. Let me tell you, you could just tell me those 3 people are in a movie, not tell me the plot. I would be in that theater day one, waiting to see what they do on screen. This is going to be a masterpiece, and it's directed by Steven Spielberg. There is no reason this movie shouldn't do well. If it fails, I may lose hope for the movie industry altogether, because
this
it's
isn't
all
a
there.
remake, right? This isn't a remake of a previous story. It's a new story.
It is not a remake. It is a new story. We are getting a new section of the franchise. Chris Pratt can fuck right off with his stuff, and I am so excited for this. I think it's about time that we see someone like Scarlett Johansson, who can really act, go after it.
Okay, Eric, I believe you're a fan of Jurassic Park World, or Jurassic World Rebirth, excuse me. And of course, I give you an assignment. Give me your top 3. We got 5 from you. Run it down the list here.
Yeah, I am terrible at picking favorites, and none of these are in any particular order. These are just 5 that I am looking forward to next year. I'll start with Jurassic World Rebirth because Steve just hit all of the major points there, right? It feels like it's got more of a dark undertone than some of the recent Jurassic World movies. Steven Spielberg being back in the director's chair is just chef's kiss. We get rid of Chris Pratt's goofy ass and Bryce Dallas Howard slowly turning into a robot in front of our face. We now get some top tier acting in there, and just a refresh on the characters in general, I think, was long overdue. So looking forward to that one immensely. Jumping over to Mickey 17. This one looks super interesting. Robert Pattinson appears to be acting his ass off in this one. Kind of like a sci-fi thriller, dark comedy scenario with a guy who signs up for a job that essentially allows a company to clone himself and send his clones out into space to explore new places to live. And while the clones end up dying in catastrophic ways, inevitably, he still ends up having their memories. It's a really interesting storyline. I love the dark humor in it. Obviously, Pattinson is just completely on fire right now. 28 years later, another franchise that I am looking forward to, the latest installment of. First and foremost, you've got Cillian Murphy back, so absolutely checks the box in that regard. Love a thriller, love a horror story. If you're looking for a jump scare right now, go watch the trailer, maybe after this episode, and it will absolutely have you screeching in your living room or wherever you're watching it. So looking forward to that one. Avatar, Fire and Ash. Love this storyline. Love the big production, the big budget. Love how immersive the worlds are that they make in this franchise. You're going to have to wait till probably Christmas to see this one next year. So I think it'll be worth the wait. And then lastly, Sinners. We've got a period piece that is largely horror-based. I think it's set around Great Depression time. It's got Michael B. Jordan in it. It's got vampires in it. Love these sort of period piece settings where they really lean into the atmospheric tones of the world that they're trying to set up. So these 5, not 3, are going to be on my list for next year.
Okay. All right. I'll round us out my top 3. We've mentioned a couple of them already. Number 1, Captain America, Brave New World. I know it's not the OG Captain America. I still enjoy the Captain America essence though. And hey, man, like we're all Americans in this. We can get behind this movie. I think a little more MCU madness. Maybe we'll get some different cameos going on in this one as well. So looking forward to that. Wicked for Good, as Steve touched on. I haven't seen the first one yet. Taking the fiance there here it just next week for her birthday. So excited for that. And then Freakier Friday. I was a big fan early on of Freaky Friday. Lindsay Lohan's on a bit of a run too, guys. She's on a bit of a run right now. She's got a couple movies trending over there on the Netflix. So looking forward to kind of seeing what she can do out there. And this is one like I hopefully like it's decent, and then I can show eventually one day my kids Freaky Friday, and then this one as well, and it can just sequels have been good lately. Sequels have been good, so hopefully
good lately.
Yeah, hopefully we can keep that running. Let's go ahead though, guys. We're gonna turn the page back to a little fantasy football. Let's turn it up a notch with waivers a week early in the scope.
Requesting permission to engage.
In the scope.
All right, it's in the scope. We are talking waivers a week early. I'm going to bring up the mainstream waiver wire targets that we're considering this week. We'll run through those. Starting at the quarterback position, we got Drake May, Aaron Rodgers. Those are really your two quarterbacks you're going to be looking at. At the running back position, Jerome Ford. Eric, you got a crystal ball or something? Because two of these top running back targets this week are previous 2 weeks in the scope targets that Eric you've outed Jerome Ford and Kendre Miller. Craig Reynolds joins the fold as Tyjae Spears does. Really, it's all injuries is kind of what's led to this. Jerome and Kendre were getting a little bit more work. So what do you think of these running backs here? Is there one that stands out to you, and can you see the future? I mean, that's what we try to do on this segment, but you've really taken it to another level, my friend.
Yes, I can absolutely see the future. It is bleak, unfortunately,
No.
with many, many running back injuries that we can take advantage of in fantasy football. I mean, look, it's not all that hard, right? Old guys who get a bunch of work tend to get hurt more often than younger guys who don't. So those are the handcuffs to target if you don't have the starting running back outright. In terms of this lot, it's probably Jerome Ford that I like the most, just because I think we've got the clearest picture that it's going to be his job for the duration, right? We've seen him do it. He's been kind of up and down, but he's flashed a little bit when he's gotten some longer runs. So cause for optimism for him with Ford. Whereas Miller, we're not exactly sure the extent of Kamara's injury. We're not exactly sure what he's going to look like with a full starter's workload. So just a few more questions swirling around him.
Mainstream wide receiver targets, Jalen, McMillan, Demario Douglas, pretty thin at that position. At the tight ends, it's Brenton Strange and Noah Gray. Steve, looking at all the pass catchers here, whether that's at the tight end position or the wide receiver position, who do you like the best? I know you've kind of been on that Baker Mayfield saddle all season long, riding with the Bake Show. You called out Sterling Shepard a couple of weeks ago as maybe an emerging target. It was actually McMillan who has really emerged down the stretch. Do you like what he could provide for fantasy managers down the stretch, or is it just a bit too risky for you?
No, it's McMillan. I think he's the one of these four guys that has shown that he can do it, right? Pop Douglas keeps looking like he's going to take that step and then doesn't. And so I'm kind of out on that. I think I'd rather have McMillan at this point, because I think you could honestly start him if you were in like a bad position.
Okay. We got Shane in the chat. What's up, Shane? Saying, what would you offer for Kendre and Ford in a 1 QB dynasty league, pushing for a third championship in a row and not sure of my last flex?
Not them. Neither of them. Don't go after them. Maybe a second.
No, I'm not giving up a second. No way. I
It's
don't want both of them.
It's a late second round pick.
I would prefer, honestly, just because it is a little more clear of an outlook, as Eric said, I would prefer to trade for Ford, I think. And I paid nothing more than
both, isn't it?
I think he's saying like either or, whoever you would like better. But Eric, for me, I couldn't do anything more than a 4th round pick and an over the hill bench player.
I mean, I would happily send out a 4th round pick for either of these guys. I mean, look, the reality is, like, we're probably looking at the end of the Nick Chubb era in Cleveland, and Jerome Ford currently is the heir apparent, right? So
Same guy
there
as
is.
both. Okay, same guy as both of them. All right.
Okay, nice. So I mean, there's value not only for his championship run, but also for potentially for future seasons. So I think it's probably more like young piece and a third round type of package that I would try to put together for Ford. But I mean, if it puts you over the top, send out your odd numbered draft picks, right? Your third rounders, maybe your first rounder with something coming back because you're going to be, one of the last two picks of that round.
No, I'm not doing it. I'm not even
You
with
you should absolutely take that. It's sending out your first and getting a third back with Ford. That's perfectly fine if that cements a championship for you.
I'm not. No, I value my picks too much. I can't do it.
Why you're not competing for championships.
Shane, let us know in the chat below. I'm curious to know who your other options are for your flex. Like how big is Ford or Kendra Miller of an upgrade? That would be my question mark. I do want to get to the in the scope targets. These are guys that you don't have to spend. I mean, really, you don't have to spend a ton of fab. No one has fab at this point. Also, there's probably not a lot of teams competing on the waiver wire, but these are guys who we think could potentially be next week's waiver wire ads. Eric, coming right to you first.
Going to go back to the running back markets. This time, not necessarily looking at a straight line handcuff. Going with Kimani Vidal. I mean, look, he, I guess, technically is kind of overlaps with the handcuff category, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a world where he actually takes over this backfield. First and foremost, we have seen what this Chargers offense is when their running back position isn't delivering. So they are looking for answers there. And it's not Gus Edwards and it's not Hassan Haskins. So if nothing else, we might get, a bit of a showcase, kind of a trial run out of him. I think there's going to be in game scripts where they're going to be throwing the ball a bit more. That is certainly his territory, but also he was out on the field a ton to start that game last week. It wasn't just when they were trailing by, a mountain of points, right? Like they had him out early in the first quarter. They had him out in situations where they were tied or, at least still competitive. So I think that might be them kind of tipping their hand that they're going to give him a longer look. And there's not a whole lot of guys in week 16 on the wire that you can say that about.
Yeah, listen, like, we need to figure out Vidal's a guy or not. Like, we need to figure out if he's anything more than a jag. It's been a slow roll for him. We saw the pass catching upside early in the season. He caught that nice touchdown. Has gotten a couple receptions last week, which was nice to see that part of his game kind of come into it. But I'm with you, Eric. I mean, talk about a team that needs to probably next season go out and draft one of these running backs we talked about and that would vault them up the rankings, because JK's still has a little bit of pop. We saw it, but obviously not super reliable. So Vidal, I think, is someone you could be stashing it if you have some, if you need some help with the running back position. Speaking of help with the running back position, Shane weighing back in saying he has Ridley, who he doesn't trust, Pacheco, who hasn't had the same workload, maybe Njoku if he plays, but not super trustworthy. Last option would be Tank Bigsby. I'm not trading for Tank. I'm not trading for either of those running backs if I have Pacheco or Ridley or Njoku or Tank Bigsby, honestly. I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I think Ridley and Pacheco are definitely over them. Now that Jameis isn't starting, I think Njoku is pretty much useless. But
and Pacheco, yeah, very good point on Njoku, Steve. Yeah, that's a great point. Pacheco too. If Mahomes is banged up, even if he's playing, then they go to a heavier workload. So I think you're okay, Shane. I wouldn't.
And Ridley's also getting what's his face there, Mason Rudolph instead of Will Levis, and that has
Billy Blue
that has
Jeans.
boded well. That has boded well for him this year, though. He has done better with Mason Rudolph than he has with Will Levis
at times. I want to get to my in the scope target here. I got Tim Patrick, 7 targets and 2 scores in week 14, 8 targets and another touchdown in week 15. Ran a season high 81% of snaps this past week. And the Lions might need to rely more on the passing game without both David Montgomery, and now their defense, Carlton Davis, and one of their other starters took a heavy injury this past week. So, I mean, they're down like 10 plus guys on defense at this point from who started the season. Wide receiver 24 over the past month. I think he's going to see some volume through the air. 11th best rest of season schedule per our friends over at Fantasy Pros, with the Bears and 49ers left. Not worried about either matchup. 49ers also Monday Night Football in week 17. So if you got to roll out Tim Patrick, he can maybe be your closer to seal some ships for you. So if you're in a deep league, if you're struggling at the wide receiver position, I think Tim Patrick, wide receiver 2 over the past 4 weeks, is worth a look. Steve, any interest in Tim Patrick or the wide receiver you have highlighted tonight on In the Scope as well?
Yeah, I mean, I like Tim Patrick. It seems like JMO's kind of getting the kind of falling out of favor a bit out in Detroit with that coaching staff a bit comparatively. But as for my In the Scope target, I'm all about that Boutte, baby. And I love Kayshon Boutte out here in New England. He actually ran the most routes on the team this year. He played all but like a couple snaps. And he looks pretty good, honestly. He's caught a few touchdowns from Drake May. They seem to have a good rapport. I thought he was a good player coming out of college who had some injury concerns and that slowed him down a bit. But he's looking like he's pretty talented. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's not going to put up 40 points for you. Okay. Like, I'm going to tell you that right now. Like, but he could get you a solid 14, 15 points. If he throws a touchdown in there, he has a good game and you're good to go. You know what I mean? It's an emergency. This is the playoffs, right? So we're in the second round of the playoffs. You are scraping the bottom of the barrel at this point. So why not kind of just that's what you're going to get out of this, right? This is the end of your bench. But if you have nothing else, your guys are all injured, go for him and he may deliver for you.
Okay. Kayshon Boutte. Yeah, we got a couple guys we talked about earlier in the season who are kind of re-emerging in the scope targets, but glad to see it nonetheless. Guys, we're going to go ahead and round out the show now with a little bit of From the Forum. We're going to take your questions. So if you have any fantasy football, NFL gambling questions, college football, dynasty questions, make sure you drop those below and we'll get to them here in From the Forum.
If you're up, stuck, thinking about what to do, here at In Between, we got advice for you. Back and forth all day, trying to pick the play. Let's hear what them boys here had to say. Presented by the Fantasy Football Advice Network.
The Fantasy Football Advice Network. It's a great upcoming app. They're building a community over there. I know a lot of people, they've been upset with X, been upset with Facebook, all the social medias the past couple of weeks. No one has room for storage on their phones for all these different apps as well. This is an app that combines different elements of those social media platforms well with a creator suite that you can monetize your content like Patreon all in one place. It's just fantasy football all the time. FantasyFootballAdvice.com, Fantasy Sports Advice Network in your app store, whether on iOS or still back on the Android grind as well. So make sure you guys are checking it out over there. We appreciate them powering this segment as always. FantasyFootballAdvice.com, Fantasy Sports Advice Network in your app store. Let's get to the questions in the chat from the IBT family. Should I start Alvin Kamara, James Cook, or Niners running back this week? Eric, how do you feel? How are we feeling? We obviously don't know the status of Alvin Kamara, right? Like, we don't know what's kind of going on there. From what I read earlier, and Steve, you might be able to weigh in this on a medical professional as well. He has some type of groin injury that also affects your leg as a whole and kind of how it runs down your leg. I was kind of reading it's a specific groin injury. So maybe Steve can weigh in on that, Eric. But first, your just initial thoughts on Cook or a Niners running back kind of removing Kamara from this equation?
Yeah, I think that is the correct play to remove Kamara from the conversation until we have a clearer understanding, right? I think we presume that he is unavailable. So at that point, I would err on the side of James Cook, right? For me, that game script against New England is one that should feature a fair amount of running. Yes, he is a bit boom or bust, but generally speaking, when Buffalo is winning big, he's generally having a pretty solid performance to get there. But honestly, you're kind of splitting hairs here, right? I've got Cook at 13, I've got Garendo at 16. So you're looking at kind of a fringe running back one either way.
Okay. All right, Steve, how do you feel about it? And any more information from you? I believe it is technically a groin abductor injury, if I'm right on that.
Yeah, so it's the muscles that bring your legs together. So there's abductor, adductor injuries. They don't let you squeeze your legs as tight, right? So if you're not able to squeeze the muscles, that means you're not able to contract your muscles as much, which means your explosiveness is going to be affected. Now, when he left the game, they were like, "Oh, he's questionable to return." They didn't like rule him out right away. He went to the medical tent and he kind of went in the back. And I'm assuming he got some work done and was like, this game's kind of like, I'm just gonna like, let's just call it because the season's pretty lost. You don't want to like have him do something worse. I would take James Cook at this point, just because of the health, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if Kamara plays, he's not 100%. We know he's dealing with like a broken hand and like his rib injuries. Now he's adding this groin injury to it. I know Alvin Kamara is a certified competitor, right? Like he is going to be out there if he can be out there. He's not really one to quit, but James Cook is explosive right now. That offense is putting up points like it's going out of style. I like James Cook a little bit more at this point. The Niners running backs, just take that away. Like, don't even bother me with that. It's Cook, Kamara, Niners running backs. If Kamara doesn't play, obviously that changes the.
I think the thing I like about Cook this week, boys, is big spread. Big gaping spread. 14 points, 14.5 over 2 touchdowns at some books as well. So when you're looking at that type of situation, what do you expect? Well, you expect Buffalo to have to grind out the clock. Yeah, maybe we see some Ty Johnson. We'll probably see some Ray Davis in that situation as well. But I'm sure we'll see a heavy dose of our guy James Cook there. So it's James Cook for me too. I don't want to flirt with the Alvin Kamara injury. Garendo against Miami, that's fine, but you're playing with a little bit of, a little bit of fire there in San Francisco. You don't know what you're going to get from the offense from week to week. A lot of situations happen out there. So I think you guys nailed it with that one. Here we got a question from our guy TS in the chat of the IUT family. Thanks for hanging out, TS. We appreciate it. Hope you subscribe to the channel as well. Falcons, Bengals, or Bills defense this week. Of course, we got the Bills. They're heading up. They're going to be facing New England at home in Orchard Park. The Falcons been a bit anemic on offense this season. However, the defense this week, they get a cake matchup with the Giants. And then also looking at the Bengals defense, I don't know if anyone can trust the Bengals defense totally. However, it is Dorian Thompson-Robinson under center. Steve, do you have a lean, whether it's the Bengals against DTR, whether it's the Atlanta Falcons against whoever the hell is going to be under center for the Giants? I'm guessing Tim Boyle if we don't see Tommy DeVito back out there, or do you like the Bills against your boy Drake May?
My only fear with the Bengals is that DTR looks so bad that Jameis Winston goes back in there and just starts hucking the ball all over the field.
Yeah.
In which case it's going to be a bloodbath. I probably like the Falcons, honestly, out of this group. It probably goes Falcons, Bills, Bengals, for me at this point. I don't think the Patriots are really. I think that's a safe play, and I think the Falcons might get a little bit of an injection of energy by switching to Michael Penix this week. So I think that everyone on the team is going to play just a little bit harder for the rookie to get him his first dub at the NFL level.
Yeah, good call and good foresight from both you and Erica a few weeks ago, who said, hey, maybe this happens. I was, kind of on the fence whether they would make the call, especially still in this thing at 7-7. Eric, your thoughts on defenses here for our guy or gal TS?
I'm going to go the exact opposite. I'm going to put the Bengals here first. For me, it's a product of defensive scoring being kind of back-asswards, right? Like you need touchdowns. Touchdowns come from turnovers. Turnovers come from the Browns quarterback position, whether it's DTR or Jameis Winston. So I think they'll probably stick with DTR all the way through, but he's got plenty of oofs on his highlight reel as well. So I'll chase the turnovers with the Bengals.
I'm Atlanta, Cleveland in that order. I do think we see some Tim Boyle fuckery as well, and potentially throwing it up there. And I like what Steve said about maybe a rejuvenated Falcons team as a whole with Michael Penix Jr. under center. Shane asking, what games or spread money lines do we like this week? So I won't go through my whole card. Specifically NFL, I have not bet a ton of NFL this week. I do have some bets for college football. I'll throw out to us quickly for you, Shane. Ohio versus Jacksonville. This is staff DNA curable. This is on Friday. I like Ohio on the money line. Jacksonville State, of course, losing Rich Rod to at WVU. Ohio also lost their head coach, but Jacksonville State, ton of opt-outs. Ohio just coming off that MAC championship. They're looking good. They have everyone ready to go other than their head coach. I also like Florida to cover 13 points against Tulane in the Gasparilla Bowl. Ton of opt-outs for Tulane. They lost their starting quarterback, Darian Mensah. And Florida, they got this guy, DJ Lagway, who I'm sure we're going to be talking about a ton next year on the program, potential Heisman hopeful. So I like them. I also like the under on Friday night in that Notre Dame-Indiana game. It's going to be cold up there. Also, these are two great defenses. What does Notre Dame do? They run the ball well. Indiana, they're great at stopping the run as well. So I think we're going to see a defensive-minded game up there. Indiana, they throw it around the yard a little bit, and Notre Dame doesn't allow that to happen even with Ben Morrison out. So those are my favorite bets. I got 3 on Friday for you. Eric, do you have anything in the NFL betting market that you're looking at right now for Shane?
So I usually dive into bets later in the week, so I'll do this one live. My hometown Houston Texans getting 3 points at Kansas City. I think that we are going to see Carson Wentz this week because the coaching staff came out and said Patrick Mahomes is week to week. And generally at the beginning of a week, when a coach indicates that as such, week to week as a player's designation, it's very, 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 very unlikely that player plays. Patrick Mahomes is a hoss. He could prove me wrong, but I think there's going to be a point where we see the Texans flip to be a favorite in this game when Carson Wentz is announced. So I think it's worth speculating while they're still getting some points. I also like this Giants and Falcons matchup. Right now we're looking at 40.5 points. Yes, Michael Penix is coming in, and he should, on paper, be more capable of moving the ball than the husk of Kirk Cousins. But I think Atlanta showed us last week exactly what their game plan is. They're gonna try to sweat this one out. You lean on Bijan, lean on their defense against an inept offense on the other side of the lineup. So I think that we can see this one being another like 30-ish point or even less scoring outing. So those are the two that kind of jump off the page for me as I'm looking at it live.
I've been finding myself betting a ton of unders the last couple of weeks, especially with all the backup quarterbacks we have. Like this is kind of the time I feel like in the NFL, I'm really betting those totals, and I am going under the point total. Steve, do you have a favorite total bet or an ATS bet, money line bet, whether that's in college or CF or NFL this week?
I haven't made my bets yet. I don't know. Like, not really. I'm not. I haven't looked at it yet. So
that's fine. No worries.
Tuesday. I'm just not quite there yet. So
no worries.
Nothing for you yet.
No worries. Jags Raiders under looking enticing too. Yeah. What is that line?
Yeah. If it's, I mean, it should be like 18. I mean, those teams suck.
Jags Raiders sitting at 39.5. That looks pretty good for an under. Arizona is a better team than a 4.5 point spread against Carolina. Yes, they're on the road, but I think that they should be a bigger favorite than that.
Braden in the chat. What's up, Braden? Good to see you, buddy. Who do I play at flex? Terry McLaurin versus Eagles, Pickens versus Ravens, or Jeudy versus Cincy? Oh, man. Okay, well, I think we kind of, again, have to kind of disqualify Pickens right now because this is a pretty serious groin strain. I'm not sure if he's out there or if he is. He is at 100%. It's a great matchup against the Ravens, but I'm going to remove him from this conversation right now on it, boys. And I think we're looking at Jeudy versus Cincy, who's been sensational, wide receiver 1 over the past month. But Terry McLaurin, what he's been doing is great. Tougher matchup, though, Steve, against the Eagles. They got guys like Mitchell out there. They got guys like Cooper DeJean who are locking players down. Do you like Terry McLaurin, who's been sensational in the tougher matchup, or Jerry Jeudy versus Cincy? But we do have DTR at quarterback we have to keep in mind as well.
I like Terry McLaurin. Here's the issue, right? Is against the Eagles earlier this season, he put up 2 points, I think. It was bad.
Yeah.
And I am very nervous because I've been riding the Terry McLaurin train, right? Like I have Jane Daniels and Terry McLaurin as a stack in my league that I want to win more than anything else. Here's the thing about competitive guys. They hate to think that there is a team that can lock them down. Yeah. I would not be shocked if Terry McLaurin goes out there looking for blood, right? He wants to go for 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like he wants to put the league on notice that like you cannot guard me. And Jaden Daniels probably is going to want to make that happen for him. Give me Terry McLaurin. He is a top 5 wide receiver this whole season. You ride that. Jerry Jeudy lost Jameis Winston. He's out at this point. Jerry Judy's going to turn back into a pumpkin. So Terry McLaurin, we're going after it, and I think it's going to be a good game for him.
I think it's Terry for me as well. It feels like the safest play, considering the quarterback concerns for Jeudy, Eric, and Pickens injury concerns. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. What I will say is if Pickens plays, I'm probably firing him up over the other two, but I think that is less likely than anything. So we'll remove him from the list. It goes then to Terry McLaurin. Yes, he has a very difficult matchup against Quinyon Mitchell, who did a fantastic job of shutting him down last week. But these individual matchups between a wide receiver and a cornerback are much more of like a DFS props type of tool than they are a season-long tool, right? At a certain point, like you start your studs, the best receivers in the league have the means to overcome a difficult matchup. And look, if Washington wants to win this game, they're going to have to find a way to get Terry McLaurin involved. Quinyon Mitchell doesn't shadow, so there will be snaps where Terry is running in someone else's coverage.
Okay. Braden, appreciate the questions, brother. Thanks so much. He's saying scared of Terry, had no catches versus Eagles. Yeah, two sides of that coin, as Steve and Eric both point out there. So, Braden, thanks so much for tuning in, man. Hope you're subscribed. Come back and hang out with us each and every Tuesday night. We're still live even throughout the off season. We'll be bringing you guys content, so make sure you're checking out with us. Oh, on that note, though, we will be live next Monday. Just want to get ahead of the holidays here. I know we're going to have games on Wednesday, so Monday night we'll be rolling 9:30 Eastern time, same place, same bad channel. Also, Derek in the chat. What's up, Derek? Good to see you, brother, as always. Saying PPR start one tight end. Oh, here we go, folks. Hunter Henry at Buffalo. Dalton Kincaid, same game versus New England. Or Brenton Strange at Las Vegas. This is a really tough one. Steve, because Hunter Henry is facing what should be a really good matchup. Wrong side of that. Dalton Kincaid facing really good matchup against the Patriots, who have been allowing a top 3 mark, 2 tight ends over the past month. So I like that. Raiders as a whole, though, this season have been a top 5 matchup for tight ends. So Brenton Strange, who got 11 targets, obviously Mac Jones throwing the shit out of the ball, had over 40 attempts last week, boost those numbers up for someone like Strange. So for me, it's Kincaid or Strange. I don't want to roll the dice with Hunter Henry. I don't think. I know you're never a Hunter Henry guy, no matter the circumstances.
I've warned people all year to stay away from Hunter Henry. Don't go back to your ex. It never works. I'm Dalton Kincaid this week. I think it's going to be a good game for him. I can see him putting up a touchdown and, 5 catches, 60 yards, touchdown. Good game.
How do you feel about it, Eric? Because if Buffalo gets ahead, maybe they stop throwing as much. Maybe Kincaid's out of the game plan early. I love, you guys know me. I love Kincaid. He was literally one of my ride or dies this season. No, this is a tough one. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, this one's real tricky. I would say in a vacuum, it is Dalton Kincaid. The thing that's frustrating is Buffalo is kind of like Green Bay East. They just have so many different capable guys that they rotate the ball around in a game script where they should be leading early and kind of slowly phasing out the pass game. So there is some downside risk with Kincaid. If you need a nice floor, I think Brenton Strange looks real appealing. He walked in and got 12 targets in that start last week. Was clearly the security blanket for Mac Jones. I think his average depth of target was like 4 yards, right? So basically any time that Mac Jones panicked or didn't want to get through his progressions, he's like, let me just dump it down here. So I think like a 5 or 6 catch game for, 20 to 50-ish yards is pretty well represented on his range of outcomes, but I don't think he's going to have the upside that a Kincaid would. So going to be a bit more situational in my response.
Okay. All right. Well, Derek, Shane, Braden, everyone in the chat tonight, Dee. I think we have Ben tuning in, Disbanded Brother, TS, Albert, Bang and Play. Thank you guys all so much, man. It's been an absolute pleasure tonight. Let us know below in the comments who we missed in our Dynasty rankings. I'm curious to see what 2025 rookies you guys are high on, who I was too high on. Some great discussion as a whole here. I think this episode, I'm excited to kind of go back even after this, maybe adjust my rankings based off some of the discussions we had together as a unit. Make sure you guys are checking out all the content we have at IBT. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new. We're here live every Tuesday evening Next 2 weeks, it will be Monday evening to get you prepared as the slates are moving ahead. We also have college football content on the website, inbetweenmedia.com. We also have PGA, NASCAR betting content, entertainment betting with Steve and the gang over at Popcorn and Root Beer as well. Thank y'all so much. Make sure you're checking out all Eric's content, everything Steve's doing on their personal Twitters as well. Eric is at Fantasy Nav. Steve's at Steve_Lawson 39. 30. Wait, no, that's
93.
definitely wrong. 93. There we go. I am at between_Seth FF. Thank you guys so much. We'll catch you next time. Until then, you know what to do. Keep it in between. Thank you.